I bought a
one
dremel
step at a time. The path
and expensive
and
bag
that's what's exciting. That's why it's an
for
adventure.
my mom.
If you scroll, I mean, they call it doom scrolling for a reason. They don't call
and
it
I'm
joy
gonna
scrolling. You start
engrave
scrolling
stuff on it.
It doesn't lead anywhere. It's
Yeah.
anti-survival.
So I'm over
it's
here
not
in the room
productive.
engraving this.
And you're creative.
I've been a tattoo artist,
You're
so
to produce something. And
I
if you
hope
take
this
the path
is like I hope this
each time when the door's opened, you walk
it's
through it.
like similar and
It
good.
leads somewhere
I put
positive, and it leads.
like I stamped
I mean, in the
this
Bible, the
with
phrase eternal life.
this.
That's
Basically what I did, right? I have
If
this
I post a
clear
video and it
stamps.
gets 10 views,
I grab the clear
one of
stamps.
those 10 people
I put some of this,
needs a service that
stamped
I
it
can
in
provide,
there,
then that opens
and
the
now
door.
I'm
And you don't
going
know
over it. I can
what
draw
door's
too,
gonna
but
open to you.
it's just
So my
this is
invitation is
too like it
for
has a design, so it's too dark to
stop
draw on it
consuming
directly.
and
So
start producing.
that's why I use the
And I
stamps
look
and
forward to
this.
seeing what you put
Plus,
out in the world. Hope
the
that
stamps
helps.
is just gonna
Speak to you
make
soon.
sure that the design is gonna be like and not whatever. Because
So
this,
I
as I
forgot to
said, is an
mention,
expensive
I wanted
bag,
to
so I
bring
don't
it
want to
full
forget.
circle by telling
Alright,
you
cool.
that recently
I am modifying a
beginning
little
of the
bit of
year,
this bird
I went
because
back to
I wanted to
Domino's
have
one day
like
a week
a
to
long
work as a
peak because
delivery
that's like
driver.
my
And I didn't do
mom's
this for
favorite
financial reasons because
bird.
I've made
The-
more money recently than I ever have. I don't need to go back to Domino's. But I enjoy the job. And the funny thing is, when you're a creator, when you're on a purpose and putting something out into the world,
what's this called? When I was watching this video, the hummingbird. But yeah, I'm gonna go back because I was watching it. But yeah, I'm just gonna work. That's it. Wow, I listened to that.
we're here to serve God. And you might not know what that is yet, but as soon as you start creating, it will be revealed to you. And it's revealed one step at a time. The path unfolds as you walk it. And that's what's exciting. That's why it's an adventure. If you scroll, I mean, they call it doom scrolling for a reason. They don't call it joy scrolling. You start scrolling TikTok, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's anti-survival, it's not productive. And you're created for more. You're created to produce something. And if you take the path and each time when a door's opened, you walk through it, it leads somewhere positive, and it leads, I mean, in the Bible, the phrase eternal life. That's going to lead you somewhere. If I post a video and it gets 10 views, but one of those 10 people needs a service that I can provide, then that opens a door, and you don't know what door's going to open.
It's
to you.
crazy because
So my
I was
invitation
just
is
talking about what
for
he's
2025,
talking right now in the
stop
video.
consuming
I was
and start
just talking
producing.
about this
And I look forward to
with a
seeing
friend of
what you put
mine
out in the world.
today. We
Hope
were
that
on the
helps.
phone.
Speak to you soon.
Who were telling me about there's actually a passage on the Bible about just
So I forgot to mention, I
creativity
wanted to bring it.
and how is our duty, just not only creativity but just like to do what you're called for to do is our duty. Like whatever God put you here for is your duty to do it. It's a sin not to do. If you have a talent, it's a sin not to do your talent. That's kind of what we were talking about, and it's crazy because, as I told him, I kind of knew that. Then I kind of got confirmed by a book called The Artist Way, about that. Yes, that's how it is. And then, now once again, crazy how I was just talking about that today. Well, he was talking about it today. And, it pops back. That's nice.
Full circle by telling you that recently, at the beginning of the year, I went back to Domino's one day a week to work as a delivery driver. And I didn't do this for financial reasons because I've made more money recently than I ever have. I don't need to go back to Domino's. But I enjoy the job. And the funny thing is, when you're a creator, when you're on a purpose and putting something out into the world, it was never the job in the beginning because I was earning money, it served a purpose. I'm grateful for my boss, and I am again because I'm working for him again. But it changes how you view yourself in the world, I guess, because now I'm adding value, and I feel like the time when I'm at Domino's is kind of like rest and recuperation, because it's not an intellectual job. It doesn't take a lot of mental effort, and I enjoy it, and I enjoyed it then, but there was something missing. So yeah, just to bring it full circle, and it's not that I have to do it. I'm only there one day a week. I like the company. The people are a lot of fun to be around. So I just thought that was interesting, that the job isn't the problem. It's the phones and the consumption. That's the problem. So if you're sat in your job thinking, oh, this is unfulfilling, if you work 40 hours a week, there are a lot of other hours that you could be fixing it. And it's the scrolling, it's the phone. So be a producer.
YouTube Ads is made for your business. Bring your brand to life with targeted video ads and connect with the perfect audience.
And yeah, just to add to whatever he was saying,
with YouTube ads.
You know, it's just the fact of how we use the rest of the time we got here. But then also, let's not forget, some people will have, you know,
go ahead, skip the ad. Save a few seconds.
I have to do a lot of reading for my job, emails, reports,
the privilege to do that. Some other people don't,
to stay
because
focused,
of
I use a
like
free
just
Chrome
life.
extension called Speechify.
No,
All I do is highlight the text, right click, and then
Crazy.
Speechify reads it out to me.
Some people got to take care of like a lot of other shit.
I can increase the
But
speed and can
I
pick
would
from a variety
agree
of
on
really
the fact
high-quality
that
voices, which just makes it so much easier to focus. I can now
you
listen
gotta-
twice as fast as I can read, and my eyes don't get strained, especially if I'm
like
working
if you don't have a
And
lot of
with one click,
time,
I can send whatever I'm reading to my
don't
phone
waste
so I
it.
can listen to it on the
No,
go.
Use
don't waste
Speechify
it.
for free on Google
Don't waste it
Chrome,
on the
so
phone.
you
Don't
can
waste it
spend
here.
less
Don't
time
waste it
reading
over there.
and more
I
time
deleted
doing what you love.
Instagram. I deleted a lot of like social media I used to use, and it's not the fact that I'm like I still have it. Like people can like find me on Instagram. I just deleted the app off my phone. So yes, I'm an artist, and yes, I need to do contacts and networking and all of that. But it's like, nah, I do it on purpose. You know, I do it purposely. I think about when I'm gonna use it and why, and if it makes sense, I do it, and if it doesn't make sense, I don't. So what I also want to do is, after I'm done with this dremel, so I don't know how it's gonna go, but I have a soldering iron that is not for this, the dremel, it is for this, but I got a soldering iron and I just want to like burn the leather a little bit. That's why it had to be a real leather, so I can do this type of work. But yeah, I want to see if I can, burn the leather so it has like, like a nice finished look to it. And now this paint is oil-based, so I'm gonna try to
We
get it
found
out.
discussing the connections between attachment theory and their early bonds with their parents. They might read a paper together by Melanie Klein, or they might relax by watching an early film by Akira Kurosawa, Rashomon, or Sanshiro Sugata. So it may come as a surprise that in all likelihood these couples would do nothing of the sort. Through our recording equipment, we might hear some of the following. One of them starting to wonder why bananas grow in an oblong curved shape. The other, not quite listening, going off on a tangent about an ulcer they've got on the left side of their tongue, while filing a toenail and half glancing at an airline review video on YouTube. Which might be followed by the other speculating, for no apparent reason, in a bad imitation of a German accent, on the lyrics in an album by Dire Straits, which might be a prelude to their partner suggesting that they wanted to follow up on last night's reheated curry with a chocolate biscuit dipped in strawberry yogurt. It might sound like regressive nonsense, and in key ways it is, but we might want to maintain that this sort of incoherent chatter should also be considered one of the high water marks of emotional intimacy, and in its way, a bellwether of the most serious kinds of interpersonal closeness. People who know each other extremely well and love one another deeply do not, it appears, sit together discussing philosophy or the accelerator theory in economics. They shoot the breeze, they swerve here and there, they talk shit, and this, far from being some kind of distraction or unfortunate lapse, is a strange and profound proof of the depths of their mutual affection. Intimacy is about daring to be increasingly and bravely weird with someone else, and finding out that that's okay with them. In the recesses of all of our minds flows a stream of consciousness that mixes the serious and the unserious, the consequential and the flighty, the physical and the emotional. And when we've allowed ourselves to be genuinely close to someone, it is to this that we take them. We do them the honor of showing
Wow,
them
so that's a
who
little
we
bird
actually, not who we should or
right
pretend
there.
to be.
No, I'm not
Privilege
the
we
other
grant
bird.
only to a handful of people in our lives. Everyone else may know our sensible selves. They've been introduced to and know how to love and take an interest in a naughty, sweet, curious, and highly peculiar babbling child. When we talk about nothing in particular, we're doing something even more significant than when we attempt to say rational and logical things. We're allowing someone into the primordial parts of ourselves that the rules of society otherwise censor. We're doing one of the most courageous and important things in the world, allowing someone else to know us.
Has desperdiciado más noches de las que te atreves a contar. Lo sabes. No hace falta que lo niegues. Te has ido a la cama con la sensación de que algo está mal, con la certeza de que el día fue otro capítulo más de una historia sin sentido. Y sin embargo, aquí sigues, repitiendo la misma rutina, esperando que el cambio ocurra por sí solo. Te
No,
voy a decir algo que quizás
todos
no
los
quieras
días yo lo
escuchar.
hago.
El cambio no es un milagro, es un asalto. No
Sí.
llega con suavidad, no toca la puerta con educación. O lo tomas a la fuerza, o nunca llega. No hay término medio. Y si sigues esperando, si sigues escondiéndote detrás de excusas y distracciones, te vas a quedar exactamente donde estás. Tienes una vida que no te llena. Lo sientes en el fondo del pecho cada vez que apagas la luz y te enfrentas al silencio. No necesitas que te lo diga, pero en vez de hacer algo al respecto, te engañas. Te
Yo
repites
estoy
las
haciendo
mismas
algo al
mentiras.
respecto.
Mañana empiezo. Ahora no es el momento. Primero necesito resolver esto o aquello. Y así pasan los días. Y así pasan los años. Pero escúchame bien. Esta noche puede ser diferente. Esta noche puede ser el punto de quiebre. No porque el universo te haya elegido para algo especial. No porque haya una señal mágica esperándote en el cielo. Sino porque tú puedes decidir que así sea. Ahora. Sin permiso. Sin más dilaciones. Y aquí entra Tarantino. Porque a diferencia de lo que crees, tu historia no está escrita en piedra. Puedes cambiar el guión. Puedes reescribir la trama. Puedes convertirte en el protagonista en vez de seguir siendo un extra en tu propia película. Pero hay un precio. Y ese precio es la verdad. El método es brutalmente simple. Una libreta, una caneta y el silencio de la madrugada. 3 cosas. Nada más. No necesitas un gurú. No necesitas otro libro de autoayuda. No necesitas esperar a sentirte motivado. Solo necesitas sentarte, tomar aire y escribir. Escribir sobre lo que estás haciendo mal. Sin filtros, sin edulcorantes, sin las excusas con las que sueles envolverte para no enfrentar la realidad. Porque aquí está el problema. No cambias porque no te atreves a mirarte con honestidad. Prefieres evitar el espejo antes que aceptar lo que ves. Nietzsche lo dijo claro. Conviértete en quien eres. Pero para eso, primero necesitas descubrir quién eres realmente. Y eso no se hace con frases motivacionales ni con pensamientos positivos baratos. Se hace con una brutalidad quirúrgica, con la capacidad de desmenuzar cada error, cada miedo, cada duda, con la paciencia de diseccionar lo que te ha llevado hasta aquí. Dostoyevsky lo advirtió. El sufrimiento es la herramienta más poderosa para conocerse a uno mismo. Y tú has estado huyendo de él. Lo has anestesiado con distracciones, con entretenimiento vacío, con la falsa idea de que
Para
si
algunas
ignoras el
personas eso
problema
puede
lo
ser real, para
suficiente,
mí no.
desaparecerá. No va a desaparecer.
Yo sí,
El cambio solo
sí
ocurre
pasé
cuando
por mucho.
decides arrancarte la venda de los ojos y mirar lo que hay debajo. Y lo que hay debajo, si eres honesto, es un desastre. Pero aquí viene lo importante. Los desastres pueden reconstruirse. Los errores pueden corregirse. Las historias pueden reescribirse. Piensa en Tarantino, un tipo común, sin conexiones, sin un camino claro. Pero tenía algo que la mayoría no tiene. Una obsesión enfermiza con la historia que quería contar. Y aquí está la clave. Su historia. No la que el mundo esperaba de él. No la que sus circunstancias parecían dictarle. La suya. ¿Y tú? ¿Qué historia estás escribiendo? ¿Es tuya? ¿O es un guión impuesto por otros? La diferencia entre los que cambian y los que se quedan atrapados en la mediocridad es simple. Los primeros se enfrentan a sí mismos con la misma crudeza con la que Tarantino escribe sus guiones. No se permiten suavizar la realidad, no maquillan los errores, no se ocultan detrás de justificaciones vacías. Así que aquí está el reto. Esta noche, cuando todos duerman, cuando el ruido del mundo desaparezca, toma una libreta y escribe, sin censura, sin piedad. Escribe todo lo que estás haciendo mal, cada decisión estúpida, cada miedo que te ha frenado, cada excusa que has usado para no moverte. Escribe hasta que duela, y cuando duela, sigue escribiendo, y luego encuentra las soluciones. No intentes justificar nada. No te digas que no es tan fácil. Claro que no es fácil. Si fuera fácil, todo el mundo lo haría. Pero aquí está la parte que no te dicen. No necesitas resolver todo esta noche. Solo necesitas tomar una decisión. Una pequeña decisión. Algo concreto que puedas hacer mañana para empezar a cambiar el rumbo. Porque si esperas a sentirte listo, nunca lo estarás. Si esperas a que el miedo desaparezca, nunca lo hará. La única manera de matar al miedo es moverte a pesar de él. Y la única manera de cambiar tu historia es agarrar la caneta y reescribirla con tus propias manos. Esta es la verdad que nadie te cuenta. Puedes cambiar tu vida en una sola noche. No porque mágicamente todo vaya a resolverse de inmediato, sino porque el momento en que decides enfrentarte a la realidad sin excusas, es el momento en que todo empieza a moverse. No hay destino escrito, no hay final predeterminado. Solo hay la historia que te atreves a contar y la historia que te resignas a vivir. ¿Cuál eliges? Y si llegaste hasta aquí, es porque una parte de ti sabe que tiene que hacerlo. No por inspiración, no por motivación pasajera, sino porque el vacío que siente...
Buena, pero no me identifica ahorita. Ahorita yo estoy en todas. Oh, wow. Me equivoqué de botón. Ok. Y aquí sí voy a escribir. So here I am.
These problems are lack of willpower. I don't know what I want in life. I'm not motivated enough. I get bored easily. I can't focus. Oh, everyone has ADHD now. All of these problems are related to screens. And what we're seeing is that people who develop screens, app developers, platforms, video game designers, the way that they compete with each other is by activating more circuits of your brain. Today, we're going to talk about end-stage screen addiction. And this is becoming an increasingly important topic because as addictions are progressing for years and years and years, they start to change or transform over time. In the early stages of alcohol addiction, we have things like cravings, we get the shakes, we get withdrawal, fair enough. But if you look at end-stage alcohol addiction, it starts to affect a lot of other organ systems in our body. We can start to see cardiotoxicity in our heart. We start to see hepatomegaly, which is a swelling of the liver, liver cirrhosis, liver cancer. And if you really look at it from the surface level, alcohol and the way it affects your brain is very different from like the organ system of the liver, right? When we think about, okay, we have a therapist who is trained in alcohol addiction, they're not necessarily trained in cirrhosis of the liver. And this is what we're starting to see in end-stage screen addiction, where it starts off with a clear idea of addiction. I can't put this screen away, right? It may start with, okay, I want to play a video game, and then what's happening is I can't get rid of the screen, so when I go to the toilet, I'm taking the screen with me. And then it ends up with, instead of taking the game to the toilet, what I'm going to do is move the toilet and replace my chair with the toilet so that I can play in a degenerate way longer than any other normal human. And this is actually what we're starting to see in end-stage screen addiction. This is a relatively new concept because, frankly, it's a relatively new phenomenon. The smartphone was invented, I think, around 2007. So now 2 decades in to people using screens, as a psychiatrist, I am seeing manifestations of screen addiction that are almost like entirely new. And the real issue here is that most of the problems that I see people struggling with, like I have a lack of motivation, I don't know what to do in my life, I'm sort of directionless, I have difficulty with willpower, all of these, I believe, are manifestations of actually years and years of screen addiction. Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we discussed to your life to actually create change, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health. The guide synthesized my years of training as a monk, along with years of clinical experience as a psychiatrist, to cover common topics like meditation, ADHD, and trauma. The guides include over 100 additional videos that can be navigated based on your needs or interests, or in a more open, choose-your-own-adventure format. The guides are now available in the YouTube store below, and if they're a little bit outside of your price point, you can check out a piece of them with our free resource packs, which are also linked below. So definitely check them out. So let's start with the first manifestation of what I would call end-stage screen addiction, which is terminal boredom. So what we're starting to see is in the early stages of, let's say, some kind of screen addiction, you want to use the screen more and more and more, but as you do this for years and years and years, I'm starting to see a very scary clinical phenomenon of people being so intensely bored that they can't do anything. So let's understand a little bit about how this works. So at the beginning, let's say I've got 3 dopamine receptors, okay? And I've got 3 molecules of dopamine. This is a normal situation. So if I read a book, my brain will release 3 molecules of dopamine. They go over here, and then I will get, 1x pleasure, 1x pleasure, 1x pleasure. So if I read a book, I've got a normal number of receptors, a normal amount of dopamine, and a normal amount of pleasure. Now when I add screens to the picture, and I play video games or watch pornography or scroll on social media, we increase the dopamine release over time. So as we increase the dopamine release, what actually happens, now we're getting a 6x signal, right? Because we're doubling the amount of dopamine. Our body does this thing called adapt or develops tolerance. So anytime we overstimulate a particular receptor, that receptor actually gets downregulated. So if we drink a lot of alcohol, we will develop tolerance to alcohol. If we use a lot of marijuana or nicotine, we will develop tolerance to it. And where does tolerance happen? Tolerance happens by the elimination of our receptors. So the signal release is still the same, right? But now what's happening is our responsiveness to it is actually decreasing. So what this ends up doing is once I cut back on one receptor, I literally remove it from the membrane of my cell. Now the video game, instead of giving me a 6x response, is now giving me a 4x response because there's only enough space for 4 of these molecules. So what tends to happen over time is this situation gets worse. So the less fun games become, the longer we have to play them. So now what I'm doing is I'm increasing my signal to 9x, and I'm super saturating my receptors. So now I'm back to a 6x signal, right? And then what happens is my brain develops further tolerance. So now we're like, hold on a second, the dopamine signal is way too high, let's get rid of it. And so we remove another receptor, and now what happens is we have very few receptors. So what does this look like over time? So the stage 1 of this addiction is games are fun. Stage 2 of this addiction is games are less fun. Stage 3 of this addiction, which a lot of people have experienced, is that other things are less fun, right? And so this happens a lot, where when you play a lot of games, and we saw this like, you know, a few years into technology addictions developing, like even when I started streaming 5 years ago, many people would say, okay, I have a lot of trouble, things just aren't very fun for me. And now, even in the last 5 years, what I've seen, I think it's kind of crazy to think about, but like, you know, smartphones were invented, let's say 17 years ago. So if we're talking about the end stage of addiction, even 5 years ago, this was 12 years ago, addictions weren't quite as bad. And now that people have been addicted for an additional 5 years, we're starting to see a new thing, which I would call terminal boredom. And I see this so much, it's been growing a lot in the people that I work with over the last 5 years, where it used to be that they had difficulty enjoying things like reading books or going for walks or things like that. People are like, oh, that stuff just isn't as fun. And now what I'm seeing is a terminal level of boredom, where anytime you do anything that is not related to a screen, you experience an intense and unsolvable level of boredom. It starts to feel like reading is like torture. Your mind can't focus. You're kind of doing this and this. You're like, okay, maybe I need to sign up for a class, or I need to do a coding boot camp. But like the second you try to do anything else, it seems like your brain just doesn't grab onto it at all. Things that you used to feel enjoyable are just not enjoyable anymore. So terminal boredom is characterized by 3 things. An intense experience of boredom, which means when you try to do anything, you just feel like this is not fun or enjoyable at all. The second thing that I've started to see is almost a physiological restlessness or physical discomfort when you're not using a screen. And the third thing is an inability to focus your mind on anything that is not screen-oriented or highly dopaminergic. What people end up with is an inability to do anything that is not like related to a screen. This is how we're seeing these people like NEETs, right? Not in education, employment, or training, or people just feel really crippled in other dimensions of their life. The second thing that I've started to see, which is super scary, is something that I'd call an introspective failure. So introspective failure starts with doing my work when I'm supposed to and using my free time gaming. Over time, what this results at is missed opportunities, right? So what happens, what I'm seeing more and more of is like, okay, I finished my first year of college, I kind of got B's, but in the summer, instead of doing an internship, this is free time, so I'm going to do more gaming, okay? And as we start to miss out on opportunities, our possibilities in life, this is the range of my possibility when I'm a freshman in college, and then I skip my first set of internships in my first summer, right? So this is the gaming during the summer. Now my range of possibilities is narrower, and then I don't do extracurricular activities because I'm going home and I'm gaming in my free time, which means that I'm spending, like, I lose out on more opportunities. And then eventually what happens is I graduate from college, but I don't have any extracurriculars, I haven't done any internships, and so then this ends up with, it's very, very, very difficult for me to have a job. So it starts out that gaming or screen time is eating up our free time, and then we end up with a very, very narrow range of stuff. So the other thing that tends to happen here is if you look at this trend, what's happening? Our screen time is increasing. And so as our screen time increases, this creates a second problem, which we know that screens, doesn't matter if it's social media, doesn't matter if it's pornography, video games, suppress our amygdala and limbic system. So what this results in is decreased emotional awareness, right? So when I'm not feeling good about myself, I can play a game, and a game will artificially give me a sense of pleasure or joy. And then when it gives me that sense of pleasure or joy, it'll also suppress the shame, the sadness, the anxiety, or whatever. So what I'm starting to see is something that I would call introspective failure, which is a combination of loss of opportunities.
With over 2 billion monthly users, YouTube ads makes it easy to expand your reach, target the right audience, and turn viewers into customers. Let your business be seen with YouTube ads.
We both know this is bull. And skip.
With Robinhood Legend, you can quickly build custom layouts and get real-time data updating at sub-second intervals.
Click below to learn more about Robinhood Legend.
And a heavy amount of emotional suppression. So what this kind of results in is at the very beginning, it's like, okay, I'm going to major in this particular thing. I want to be a programmer when I grow up. Maybe I want to work for a video game company. And over time, as I have fewer and fewer opportunities, as I don't socialize with people, as I don't have a mentor in an internship, as I stop doing extracurriculars, my view of what I want from the future starts to narrow, right? I don't really know what the possibilities are because they're all just vague possibilities in my mind. So I don't really know what's out there. And as I don't know what's really out there, that combined with suppressing my internal signals results in an inability to understand what I even want from life. So this starts out with, okay, I have some dreams and I'm gaming. The dreams get narrower, I'm gaming more. The dreams get narrower, I'm gaming more. I try to do things, I try to apply for jobs. That doesn't work, so I can't support those kinds of dreams. Then I have difficulty socializing with my friends because they're so much further ahead of me. I can't relate to them. They're going on vacations because they have intro-level developer jobs and they're making $120K a year and I'm not making any money, so I fall further and further behind. And as I fall further behind, my technology use increases. As my technology use increases, my emotions get suppressed, and this ends up with being completely directionless in life. I don't know what I want. I used to have hopes, I used to have dreams, sometimes I have fantasies, but I don't even know what I want my life to look like. I just know I don't want it to be this. But the challenge is that if we suppress our emotions, that takes away a primary motivational drive to affect change. So if we think about emotions like sadness, anger, shame, what is the purpose of these emotions? When I feel ashamed, that's my brain giving me motivation. Hey, don't ever feel ashamed again. Therefore, you need to change your appearance. You need to change the way that you talk. You need to get into shape. You need to make more money. Shame is something that drives us towards corrective action. But what I'm starting to see is this introspective failure where people don't even know what they want anymore as a consequence of lack of opportunities and a lack of being able to connect with yourself. So once we get into this introspective failure, then we sort of result in people really being stuck. Because in the past, the problem was I know what I want, but I can't bring myself to do it. And we eventually, 8, 9, 10 years after doing this stuff, I don't even know what I want anymore. And if I don't know what I want, how on earth am I supposed to find motivation? Because now I even it's not about a lack of motivation, it's about a complete lack of direction plus a lack of motivation. Now there's another thing that kind of relates to this, which is the third thing that we're going to talk about, the third feature of end-stage screen addiction, which is a lack of willpower. So this is really important to understand. When we say a lack of willpower, what a lot of people who use screens will do is they'll say okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to go, okay? This is the direction I want to go. But I cannot bring myself from here to here. I'll get distracted, I want to play video games, I want to watch porn, I want to eat a Hot Pocket, right? I want to exercise, but I can't bring myself to do it. I lack willpower, I lack discipline, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So this is what they describe, but this is not actually a lack of willpower. So let's understand how human behavior works, okay? So if a human being wants to go from here to here, this involves two things. There is a motivational drive plus a willpower to overcome resistance, okay? This is what results in behavior. Does that kind of make sense? So if we kind of think about going to the gym, if I don't feel like going to the gym, then I need to use a lot of willpower. But the cool thing about going to the gym, if you talk to people who are like in shape and stuff, right? People who do a lot of like, you know, extracurriculars towards a particular professional goal, they're not using willpower all the time. In fact, the majority of what they're using is actually like motivation, right? Why am I going to extracurriculars? Because this is a goal that I have and I'm moving towards that goal, so I'm actually motivated towards it. So I want y'all to understand this. The less motivational drive you have, the more willpower you need in order to act. And so what gamers will experience, what end-stage screen addicts will experience is I don't have enough will. That's correct. They'll say, I don't have any willpower. That's incorrect. What it really is that I don't have enough willpower. So the really crazy thing about end-stage screen addicts that I work with is that their willpower is oftentimes very high. Is actually way higher than other people. Now this may sound insane because you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, I have no willpower. So let's use an example, okay? So if you take someone who has a mood disorder like depression, this person doesn't do much throughout the day, right? They have difficulty, they can't even get out of bed. And if they get out of bed, we look at this person and we say, and this person subjectively believes, I have very little willpower. I can barely get out of bed. But them getting out of bed is not a deficiency of willpower. It is a complete loss of motivation. This is something that we call anhedonia or amotivational drives. These are common in depression. So the only thing that they can use to get out of bed is actually a very high amount of willpower, because most of us, when we wake up in the morning, we're lucky enough to want to get out of bed, right? When you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed, why do you get out of bed? Because you feel like because you want your cup of coffee, because you're ready to start the day, because you want to be finished with work, might as well get it over with. Or you wake up on a Sunday and you're like, I have nothing to do today, I can't wait to get out of bed and do something fun. So what we really see in depression is not a failure of willpower, it is a failure of motivation. And this is what we're starting to see in end-stage screen addiction. Now you may say, but Dr. K, didn't you already talk about that? Didn't we talk about introspective failure and sort of like not having a lack of, or having a lack of motivation? Fair enough. We'll talk about motivation a little bit more at the end. But let's understand the mechanism for this lack of willpower, and y'all may be surprised, okay? So we have a brain, and in our brain we have different circuits, with different anatomical portions. And we also have a site that looks like a Metroid. Holy Jesus. Okay, so in our brain, we have all these different circuits, and we have all these different biological drives. So we have a drive towards agency. This means I want to be in control of my life. We have a drive towards mastery. I want to get good at something. We have a drive towards socialization, or let's call it community,
I love you with all my heart, and that is on my indigenous language, that's Quechua. My mom loves Quechua because her mom knows Quechua, so, you know, rest in peace, my abuelita. Yeah. She used to be a teacher in a school.
Other people to speak well about me. They're like, oh, who is Alok? Who is Dr. K? Oh, Dr. K is really cool.
She used
we
to
all want this,
speak
right?
a lot
Last
in the
thing that we
school.
want is safety.
A lot of Quechua
We
in
have a
her
very
school. Mom
fundamental
remembers that.
human drive. I don't need to put
So,
anything here because safety is safety.
yeah.
We have a fundamental human drive of wanting to be safe. So if we look at the human brain, these kinds of drives motivate us to act. Okay, so there's a really great example of this, which is psychologists were looking at like why children don't give
Definitely
up
corny
when they're
in
doing
English,
things
a
like
little bit less
learning how to
corny in
walk.
Spanish,
Right, so if you think about a child who's learning how to walk, it's just full of failure. It's like you don't even know how to use your freaking legs or your feet. Like, you suck at this, kid. You completely suck at it. And yet children, despite the fact that they fall, despite the fact that they hurt themselves, despite the fact that it's really, really hard, children don't give up when it comes to learning how to walk, right? So as like a 25-year-old me, like it's very easy for me and you to give up on things. That's what I did. I gave up on life when I was like 18 or 19 years old. But for some reason, kids don't give up, even though objectively, they experience way more failure than an adult does. So what is it that drives a kid to learn how to walk, to learn how to pick up objects? It turns out that it's this thing called intent mastery. So not just human beings, but even if you look at like, you know, monkeys or birds, they're driven to become good at stuff. So we see the intent to mastery also manifest in things like, you know, why do people respect me for going to Harvard, right? That's more respectful than, let's say, going to the University of Texas, which is where I did my undergrad. Why is that? Why do people respect Olympic athletes more than like amateur athletes? So we have this societal level thing where the harder something is to do, the more you master it, the more we respect it. So that's just one example of the intent to mastery, but we also have a desire to be in control of our lives, right? All human beings want to be in control of our lives. All human beings want a sense of community, unless you've got like schizoid personality disorder. All human beings want to be safe. All human beings want to be proud of themselves. So what does this have to do with motivational drive? Really important to understand. So the problem with technology is that it tricks us into satisfying these drives. Right? So when I look at, let's say I play a MOBA, and what do I want to do? Like I was playing with someone yesterday who spent 10,000 hours playing a MOBA, okay? So I want y'all to think about this for a second, right? So Malcolm Gladwell has this 10,000 hour rule. Medical school is about 10,000 hours. Residency is probably even a little bit more, but like I know people who have spent 10,000 hours in 2 separate video games. Let's say something like an FPS and a MOBA. Like I know people like this who spent 10,000 hours. And in those 10,000 hours, I did med school. I'm not like trying to like a humble brag or flex or anything. I'm just pointing out to y'all like how much time we spend on this stuff, right? This is how long it took me to become a psychiatrist. This is how long it took me to get through medical school. And we have people who will spend 10,000 hours doing this. I probably spent close to 10,000 hours playing video games like in high school and college, right? So I'm in this camp too. But if you stop and think about it, why the hell do people spend this much time playing video games?
I like it.
Like,
I love
what
it.
the hell
I
is
just
going
engraved
on in
this
their
and
brain
this
where
on
they can
this
do this day
bag
after day after day after day after day?
for my mom.
Dopamine is
And now
insufficient
I
for this.
want to.
Because if you look at playing these games, what happens? I get
think
this
I do
trophy,
like a little-
woohoo, and then I get this trophy,
little heart
and then I
right
get
here.
this trophy, and then I get this kind of trophy, whatever. Right? And then it has these sparkles over here. So if we look at video games, the tricky thing that they do is that they start to satisfy all of these drives. They give me a sense of control in my life, because the real world, I don't control anything, right? I don't control how much money I make. I don't control whether people like me or not. But in the video game, I can play a single player RPG like Baldur's Gate, and I can have complete control over everything. I can even open up console commands and essentially be a god within the video game. When it comes to mastery, games and social media and all these tech platforms are really good at giving you trophies and giving you a sense that you've progressed, right? Gamification. I once went to a conference at Harvard Medical School where people were talking about like the gamification of a mental health app. How can we turn a mental health app into a game so that people stick with it, so that they become addicted to it, but for their own benefit, right? I'm going to addict you, but it is good for you. We get a sense of community, so as we make more and more friends on Discord, as we have these online relationships, our drive to connect to other people actually decreases. Then we start to develop an identity, right? So I'm on the internet, I'm Nubs, right? So you start to develop a identity of who you are. You have a character, you have cosmetics, and gaming companies understand this. We have social media is all about crafting an artificial identity. And then the other beautiful thing is that the internet is a very safe place, right? Because if I don't like someone, if I don't like my boss, or if I get bullied at school, I have to deal with them tomorrow, right? I don't get to run away from my bullies. I have to go to school every day. That's something that I lived for 10 years of my life, is facing my bullies every single day. And if I don't like my boss, like I have to stick with it for a little while. But when it comes to video games, hey, I don't like this person. The games give us the opportunities to block players, to avoid players. I never want to see this person again. If I screw things up with one group of online friends, I can just go join a different online group of friends. If I get banned from one community, I can go to a place where I feel safe. Now, the biggest problem here is that it's not that these things just gratify these needs. It's that when you use technology, when you use social media to craft a sense of identity, when you use cosmetics to craft a sense of identity, the problem is that it depletes your motivation to fix it in the real world. There are just enough parts of your brain that get fooled by the artificial or virtual activation of these needs, that then your brain doesn't feel hungry anymore to fix things in your real life, right? When I go home and I'm feeling lonely and I hop onto Discord and I'm hanging out with my friends, the drive, the need, the desperation to connect with other people just becomes something that I feel at the edges of my day. right? When I'm going to bed at night, I kind of think back and I'm like, man, I really like long for human touch. Sometimes when I'm like taking a shower, I start to think about how lonely I am. But then the moment that the shower stops, I have something playing on my phone and ha ha ha, Arrested Development is so great, right? And then I'm back to the screens, I'm back to the social media, I'm back to the video games, and then all of my real needs get pushed to the side. So this is what we're seeing with end-stage screen addiction, is that as more of your psychological needs get fulfilled, the motivational drive to actually fix your life goes way down. Because it's kind of like thinking to yourself, like, I'll give you all an analogy. So if my body craves nutrition, if I'm like, I need to eat broccoli, I need to eat asparagus, I need to eat lean proteins, I need to eat whole grains, if I eat a couple of Twinkies and Doritos, even though I'm not satisfying my nutrition, I'm getting a ton of artificial calories, and that kills my sense of hunger, right? So I was talking to a streamer who's like eats this cheesy rice, and they're so calorically deficient, they're so starving because they've been suppressing all of their hunger signals, all of their nutritional signals, that after a 10-hour gaming binge, they'll like make a pot of rice and then they'll add like cheese to it, and like they like mac and cheese but just rice, and then you scoop it into your face. So this is what technology is doing to us. It's basically the cheesy rice for our brains. It's very calorically dense and not nutritious at all. But the problem is once you have a belly full of cheesy rice, your desire to eat broccoli decreases completely. It's completely shot. So in the end stage of screen addiction, what starts to happen is at the very beginning, we're getting part of our needs met in the real world, and then we get some enjoyment out of life. But out of video games. But over time, what happens is we get fewer and fewer psychological needs met by the real world, and then we rely on the virtual world to fulfill my sense of being good at something, right? This is why people tilt so much in video games. It's like, I feel like such a loser in real life that I really want to dumpster some crappy POS noob. I'm going to put this person in their place in a Reddit argument about quantum mechanics and philosophy, or in a video game when I'm going to aim hack in Deadlock because I need to feel like a winner, right? So this is what happens. And as we feel like a winner in a game like Deadlock or whatever, aim hacking, whatever happens, then that part of our brain gets a little bit satisfied. As it gets a little bit satisfied, our motivational drive actually decreases. As our motivational drive decreases, we do less in the real world. As we do less in the real world, then something scary happens. We become dependent on the screen to fulfill our psychological needs. And that's ultimately what end-stage screen addiction looks like. It's a lack of willpower, which is not a lack of willpower. It's just you can't use willpower to substitute for a motivational drive at all, right? So if you're struggling with end-stage screen addiction, I want you to think about the subjective experience of doing something healthy, of stopping to play the video game. Just look at yourself and look at how Herculean your effort is. It is so hard to leave the house.
I have one of these
it is
machines
so hard
in
to
Peru.
go for that third job
This
interview
one I might
after
return.
you've been rejected from the first two. If you really look at yourself, it's not that there's a lack of willpower, it's that the amount of willpower that you need to overcome your resistance is so high. So that's because there's a lack of a motivational drive. You really don't feel like doing it, right? So everything that you have to do has to require a ton of willpower. Let's talk about decay of motivational drive. So this is step number 4. Now y'all may be saying, but Dr. K, didn't we just talk about lack of motivational drive? Yeah. So we talked about 2 systems, but now we're going to tie everything together. So what I see in people is not just a lack of willpower, but an overall failure of motivational drive. And this has a couple of different components to it. So we have to understand what dopamine does. Okay, so now we're going to talk about dopamine. So dopamine gives us pleasure, gives us behavioral reinforcement, and gives us craving. So one is the psychological needs that get fulfilled through games and how that creates a lack of motivation. But then there's also motivation on a very specific dopaminergic nucleus accumbens level. So let's understand this. So if I eat a Twinkie, I get a rush of pleasure. And the part of my brain that gives me a rush of pleasure also creates a desire for a Twinkie tomorrow. That's what we call behavioral reinforcement. So I'm going to want a Twinkie tomorrow. And then it also creates craving, right? So the way that we reinforce behavior, the way that we get the human organism to repeat the behavior is by giving us a craving. Now, this is a huge problem. Because when I do something like
Now,
play a
this
video
is
game,
like
I get a rush of pleasure,
similar
and then I
as
create a
tattooing.
craving to play the video game tomorrow. So what I'm actually doing is motivating
Only
myself
49
tomorrow
minutes,
to
that's
play
cool.
a video game. The
I
moment that
probably
I
lasted
fun
like an
with
hour
something,
doing
I
this
feel
because
motivated to do it again.
it was like
So if we look at something like falling
the
in love,
beginning part I didn't
falling in love
record.
is also mediated by dopamine. I'm not talking about being attracted to someone, and I'm not talking about being in love with someone in a long-term relationship. So if you really look at the process of falling in love, where you're like, oh my God, I just want to touch this person. I just need to be in their presence. I want to smell, oh my God, just everything about them. Oh my God, I can't stay away. That falling in love, that intoxicating falling in love, is mediated by our dopaminergic circuitry. Okay? So it gives us pleasure and it creates cravings towards that thing. So now we run into another kind of motivational drive problem, which is that once we start using our dopamine on screens, we have less dopamine
Wrote a message on the bottom,
to reinforce
just
other
free-handed.
behaviors.
I think it gives it like a
So
little
this
like
is important to understand. When it
different
comes
like
to dopamine,
vibes, but
we
this
have
is
a
how it's
fixed
supposed to
quantity
look.
of dopamine
How
in
it
our brain.
looks.
Okay? It gets stored in these things called vesicles. So we have these little pouches
Maybe
of
in the
dopamine
handle
that
I'ma
then
put
get
something in
released
this handle
out
right
into
here.
the space between two neurons, and then they float over.
Maybe I'm
to
just
our
gonna do
dopamine
like a little
receptors,
like this
okay?
sign. Maybe
This
I'm
is
not
how it
gonna
works.
do really
Now, the really
nothing.
interesting thing is that we used to think that once we release dopamine, it gets repackaged and we can use it again, which is somewhat true. But clinically, what I really observed is that you basically have a fixed amount of dopamine every single day. Now, what that means is that, I hope this makes sense. So remember that dopamine creates behavioral reinforcement and craving. So the way that you spend your dopamine today determines what you will want to do tomorrow. So for example, today, I'm just gonna be straight with y'all. It's Saturday at 2 p.m.
Whoa.
I'm working, okay? Why am I
Grab the
working
correct
on
one.
a
This is not
Saturday
doing
at
it.
2 p.m. instead of taking a day off? It's because when I wake up in the morning, I've got a fixed amount of dopamine, and what I'm gonna do
Maybe this is another
make a
type of
video.
leather
Now,
or
if you think
something.
about it, if I have a ton of dopamine and I make a video, like I'm loving this right now. Y'all can look at my face like this is a hype, right? Like I'm doing something good for the world. I feel good about it. It's fun. So now when I make a video, I'm gonna get 8 units of dopamine released. What this means is that tomorrow my desire to work, because I have dopaminergically reinforced doing work on a weekend, right? This is how I work 6 to 7 days a week. Because when I wake up first thing in the morning, what I try to do is do some work, and then you feel good about it. Like, you'll know what I mean? Think about the subjective
That's
experience.
crazy.
Of
No,
when
that's
you
not
wake up in the morning,
working.
you're like, I'm gonna like take care of some work today. And then noon rolls around and you're like, I've gotten so much done. Because you utilize your dopamine to
Whoa,
reinforce
it's
your
not working,
desire
and it's
to
literally
work.
the same
I've now
joint. I don't know
motivated
what's
myself.
going on.
And if you do
it
this
is not.
properly, you can even create cravings for work. Like, it's beautiful. Now, the problem with end-stage screen addiction is that we wake up in the morning, we have a limited amount of dopamine, right? We've developed tolerance, so instead of 3 dopamine receptors, I only have 1. I play a game, and then I release a lot of this dopamine over here, right? So here's 8 units. And I get 8 units for 1 unit of pleasure. So then what happens, since I'm resistant to the dopamine, I have to play something else, I have to watch anime, I have to eat other kinds of food. Now I've suppressed my hunger signals. I'm going to use my last 4 units of dopamine to get a little bit more pleasure. And then my dopamine stack is empty. And once my dopamine stack is empty, I try to work. And then the problem is once my dopamine stack is empty, I don't enjoy it, right? Do y'all enjoy work? Of course not, because you have no dopamine left. And if you have no dopamine left, you can't enjoy work. And if you don't enjoy work, there will be no craving, no motivation, or no behavioral reinforcement. So this is what I tend to see in end-stage screen addiction. This process has gotten so bad that their dopaminergic tolerance is so high that even if they do some amount of work, they don't feel any pleasure from it, right? And if they don't feel any pleasure, that means we're not activating our dopaminergic circuitry, which means I won't get behavioral reinforcement and I won't create cravings for myself. The last dimension of end-stage screen addiction is executive dysfunction. So our frontal lobes do 2 things. They plan, well, they do a lot more, and execute actions, and they control impulses. So if you look at people who are like normal, what they end up doing is planning for the future, right? They're like, man, I'm gonna go to, so I had friends like this, right? So when I was in high school, I had friends who were also gonna be doctors. We were all going to be doctors, and they're like, yeah. So one of my friends applied for a 6-year accelerated medical program, where you basically go straight into med school after high school, and she was kind of committed to doing what she wanted to do. They plan and they move towards a particular future in a very like focused and aggressive way. What our frontal lobes do, they take abstract goals and they break them up into pieces. Like if I think about, okay, I want to be happy. What is that? That's an abstract goal. Like I have no idea like what the steps to be happy are, right?
I did a
But then
sun
my
on
brain
this
sits
side
down
and
it's
a
like,
moon
okay,
on
if I
this
want to be happy,
side.
I need to get financially independent. I need to find a relationship, and I need
Has
to
the
take care of my physical health.
birds,
I need to
one
take care of my
here,
mental
one
health. Then out of being happy,
flying.
in order to become financially successful,
I really
need
like it.
to
I love it.
get
I
a
like
good degree.
it. I like
In
it.
order to get a good degree,
I like
I
it.
have to go to a good college. In order to go to a good college, I have to study very hard. In order to study very hard, I have to, this Tuesday, I have to study for my math test this Friday. So if you look at what the frontal lobe does, and this is what we call maturity, by the way, it takes like this abstract goal and it breaks it down into tiny little pieces. And this is how someone becomes successful in life, right? They take 1,000 tiny steps in one direction, and over the course of a couple of years, they end up in a good place. This capacity to plan and execute tasks over time is what our frontal lobe does. So I'll give you all a simple example of this, right? Like, oh, I have a party this weekend. Or forget about party, I'm hosting
Whoa,
date
it's crazy
night at
how
my
that's a
house.
frontal
So
lobe
even
thing,
then,
and in the
our
past they
executive
used to do
function has to
frontal
plan,
lobe
right? So it has to be
lobotomies
like,
for people
okay, I'm
with
gonna invite
depression,
these 6
and that's
people.
crazy
I
because
need to
they
invite them on
basically
Monday
needed
so
that
that I give
frontal
them a
lobe
day or two to figure out if they're
to
coming on Wednesday. On
overcome
Wednesday, I
their
need to go to the
depression.
grocery store. I'm going to be doing a smoked whatever. So in 8 hour, I'm going to stick something in the smoker so that we can eat really well playing with D&D as well. Figure that out.
The last
We eat really well. We're not degenerate gamers with Doritos and Mountain Dew. It's
lobotomy
like
was done
like tea and all
in
this
Brazil,
other
I
stuff.
think in the 80s, not even
Executive
like that
function
far
plans
ago.
out the stuff, and then I have to like do all the steps in time so that I
Just
can
random
do
facts
something
that
fun.
I'm
So this is what
throwing
executive
there.
function is. Now the problem is that when we use screens, the executive function in our brain starts to rust. Because I want y'all to think about whatever screen you use, how much do you have to plan and execute? You don't have to do crap, right? When I load up for a game, they make it so easy for me to queue. I don't have to think about which trophies I'm grinding. I don't have to think about this or think about that. It's all automatic. They break apart all the steps for you. So I even remember like when I was playing Morrowind, right? So 100 years ago, back in the good old days of gaming, like there's this Elder Scrolls game called Morrowind. It's Elder Scrolls 3. And one of the first quests that you get is like, you need to go to Sulipund and Punavi. And they give you this really complex...
You need to stretch. I am stretching. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. You know what? How about you be my trainer? I see why they call side to the uniform. That's tough.
Text about how to find Sulipund and Punavi. They're like, leave Balmora from the east exit, follow the river until you come to the bridge, cross the bridge, and on your left there's going to be a dry gulch. Follow the gulch north until the second hill, and then go right past the hill. And so this is the way that games used to be. There was no objective markers telling you on your mini-map where you need to go. So if you think about what games do, what social media does, you don't have to show up on social media and you're like, okay, today, when I'm browsing TikTok, I need to look at these 18 shorts. Because if I look at these 18 shorts, I will check these boxes and I will progress in life. No, you show up, you go like this, and you're like, give me the content, man. Come on, son. Oh, yeah, give me that content. Give me that content. Oh, yeah, give me that trophy. Just do it. Let's figure it out for me. I'm not going to think it. Oh, my God, yeah. Right? Your frontal lobes are completely shut off. And this is the key thing to understand about the human organism, the human brain, the human body. The human body doesn't wear out. The human body rusts. If you don't use your muscles, they'll become flabby. If you use them more, you will become stronger. So the problem right now, if you look at all
Some
of these
messages in the
apps,
bottom.
right, any kind of
So they'll
screen
write things in
tries to take the work
This
away
is actually
from you.
the thing that looks
If you
good.
watch any
And
kind of like
we are
streaming
done.
service,
I think
they
I'm
even know.
done.
They're like, hey,
I wanna
you just need to click. We're gonna tell
try
you what
to
to
do the
watch.
thing with the
We're gonna entice you. We think you'll love this because it's similar. We're gonna take all the work away from you. You don't have to plan anything. All you have to do is,
With
yeah.
the-
And then, we figured out that you need to autoplay. We're even going to skip the credits. It used to be in streaming services, like you'd have to watch the credits, or you'd have to manually move to the next episode. But these streaming services have figured out, that's too much to ask. Fucking hitting next episode is too much to ask.
So this one
We're
right
gonna do
here,
it
this
for
is
you.
not
We're gonna
supposed
autoplay the
to
next
be
episode.
used
We're gonna
for
skip past the intro because we figured out you don't like
leather.
watching the
This
intros.
is just a
Right, we're
plain
gonna give
old
you the option. It's really easy to skip
soldering
past the
iron
intro.
for
We're gonna do
soldering.
things for you
But
easier
I
and
think
easier and easier.
I am gonna be a
We are
crazy
going to
person.
make
No,
your
I'm just
frontal
gonna use
lobes
it
more and more rusty.
because it
And
burns.
as we use
And, yep.
technology like this, what I've started to see is an end stage screen addiction. People literally do not know how to plan their lives. They can't take an abstract issue like, I need to move out of the house. They don't know what the steps are. And it's not that they're dumb or anything. It's that the part of their brain that takes moving out of the house and breaks it up into pieces stops working. Now, the second thing that happens that all these screens have gotten really good at is impulse control. So the whole problem with impulse control is that our brain, our frontal lobes normally control our impulses, right? So when I sit down to study, my brain will be like, let's not study, let's use this. And then my brain is, and then I have to control it. My brain is like, no, we're not going to give into that impulse. We're going to sit down, we're going to focus on studying. There's impulse control. I have an impulse to stop studying, and I have an impulse to, I don't feel like going to that party. I have an impulse to not go to the party. So I'm going to ignore the party and just stay home. It's an impulse. I have an impulse to stay in my bed and binge watch another episode of the show, as opposed to getting out of my bed and showering. Right? These are all impulses that we have. The impulse to stay still, the impulse to queue for another game, can't quit on a win, can't stop on a loss, right? Or can't quit on a loss, can't stop on a win. So this is what happens. So our frontal lobes control our impulses. But now what's happening is the more we use technology, they're not trying to get us to control our impulses. They are activating impulses for us. So if you look at what's happening with all technology, they're making it easy for you to keep watching. You don't have to restrain or control yourself at all. We're going to autoplay the next video. We're going to show you more bright sounds and more bright colors. Right now, after a game, there's an MVP thing. And have y'all ever wondered this? Sometimes I wonder whether everyone sees the same MVP at the end of a game. Which video game company out there has figured out, you're going to be MVP 30% of the time. That's the fixed rule. And other people may see other kinds of MVPs, but why is it that MVP has to be the same person on every single match, right? It's kind of bizarre. But this is what video game companies are doing. They're figuring out how to control your impulses by making it brighter, by making it faster. So short form content is really good at this, where they're like, okay, if you have an impulse to scroll, we're going to make it so easy for you to scroll. Bored with this? No problem. Just touch, just a little bit, just a tiny little touch, and we'll give you the dopamine. You don't have to restrain your impulse. You don't have to make it to the end of the video. Ridiculous, right? Make it to the end of the video until you unlock the next one? Hell nah. We're going to make it so easy for you to give into your impulses constantly. And all these platforms are fighting a war where they're trying to give into your impulses more and more and more. If you get bored with TikTok, you're going to jump over to YouTube Shorts. If you get bored with YouTube Shorts, you're going to jump over to Instagram Reels. So all these platforms are fighting, and the key thing that's happening is the more time you spend on them, the less control you have over your impulses. So as you use technology for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, I'm seeing a decay in executive function, a decay in the ability to control our impulses, a decay in the ability to operationalize tasks, break tasks apart, split them up into their pieces, which, by the way, requires impulse control, right? If I'm planning a party, I have to stop playing games so that I can go to the grocery store. Those two things get really tied together. So this is the other feature of end-stage screen addiction. And the last thing to consider is that so many of the problems that we see today, these problems of lack of willpower, I don't know what I want in life, I'm not motivated enough, I get bored easily, I can't focus, everyone has ADHD now, I have social difficulties, we didn't even get to that. All of these problems are related to screens. And what we're seeing is that people who develop screens, app developers, platforms, video game designers, the way that they compete with each other is by activating more circuits of your brain. There was single-player RPG, and then we added MMOs, a multiplayer component. Then we added progression. You can play games like Genshin Impact or FF14 and never beat the game. There is constantly more agency, more mastery, more community, more identity. Oh yeah, I'm Grand Marshal of whatever. I'm Gladiator, rank. I'm this rank. I'm that rank. I'm Immortal rank. I'm Challenger League. They're giving us all of these things to activate different parts of our brain. And so as they're activating all these kinds of things, it's manifesting as so many of the problems that we see in today's world. And what's going on? Everyone's got a lack of willpower. They can't focus. Everyone's ADHD now. And what's the one big correlation? Technology use has risen to 4 hours and 37 minutes per day for the average person. This can go as high as 6 or 7 hours, like I know y'all. This is the HD community. So 4 hours and 37 minutes of screen time is amateur hour for us. I think that's cell phone use, by the way. So it doesn't include other screens, right? Crazy. Amateur numbers over there. God tier gamer like myself, goated gamer of all time, goated NEAT of all time. I can, those are rookie numbers, son. So if you have any of these problems, chances are it correlates in some way to your screen time usage. This is what I've seen clinically. And we don't even have studies for this stuff because this stuff is so new. We don't even think we're still debating whether video game addiction is a real thing or not.
Paint.
So things are moving so slow that we don't even realize this stuff. So if you're struggling with these things, I'd strongly recommend that you listen to your instinct, which is that screen use is a big part of the problem that you face. And start by taking a break, being in nature, going for a walk every day, and delay your screen time as much as possible. Do as much productive stuff as you can so that you reinforce the right kind of behaviors.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't like this.
Olay is changing my shower game with 5 skincare benefits.
Yep.
Olay Super Serum Body Wash.
Eventually, businesses started opening their doors and allowing us to go back inside. And I'll tell you guys right now, my big guilty pleasure is Starbucks, okay? That's my guilty pleasure. I'm all about a Starbucks drive-thru. But the difference is, when you have the option of going inside versus drive-thru, that's one thing. But when they tell you can't go inside anymore, and then they tell you can, you kind of miss. Like me, I couldn't wait to go back inside when they said the doors were opening up. I couldn't wait to go in and order from a counter and talk to a person and look at a menu. I didn't mind. I showed up early. Got my dogs with me. I didn't care. We walk into Starbucks. And I know they did this over in Long Beach. I'm not sure if they did this here, but they put stickers on the floor. And so there I am standing on this freaking sticker. I got my dogs just chilling, standing there looking like a third grader. We're just chilling, waiting, and some lady behind me notices that I'm holding 2 dogs. She clearly had an issue with the fact that I was holding 2 dogs, and instead of saying, pardon me, excuse me, hey there, hi, hola, she does the whole, I'm hearing this, and I'm like, shit, COVID. I don't see any stickers. I'm off the grid. And she was like, I do not have COVID. Are those service dogs? They're Chihuahuas. And these in particular are the complete opposite of service dogs. Well, are they supposed to be inside? I said, I didn't ask. It's just that I didn't want to leave them in the car. I'm not even staying. I'm just going to order my drinks and I'm going to leave. I'm not even going to put them down. I'm sorry. And she's like, well, are they at least legal? You're going to ask a Mexican if his dogs are legal? Fortunately, next in line. So I get to the front, and now I'm worried because the lady has me thinking in the back of my head that I'm doing something bad, that I'm about to get scolded or kicked out. So I'm trying not to make eye contact with the guy. So I'm just looking at the menu, and I hear him, dogs. Oh, hi, bro. Sorry about that. Sorry. I know. They're adorable. What are their names? Oh, well, this is Vinny. This is Risa. They're so cute. Oh, thank you. And then here comes another barista, and she's like, I see dogs. I'm sorry. They're adorable. What are their names? I was like, oh, well, this is Vinny. This is Risa. They're too cute. Well, thank you. So I placed my order, and then the girl barista, she goes, yes? You know I gotta tell you something about your dogs, right? I know, I'm sorry, I just didn't want to leave them in the car. What are the little ones gonna have? Well, as much as I would love to share my coffee with my dogs, I don't think caffeine and chihuahuas mix. No, silly. Maybe your little puppies would like a puppuccino. Okay, you see that shit? Now you're vocal. When I talk about the stickers, we don't know nothing about stickers. Pero un pinche puppuccino all freaking day, right? Sorry. Anyway, when she said puppuccino, I was like, what kind of a drink is it? I'm looking at the menu. I'm like, I don't see that shit anywhere. What is that? No, silly. A puppuccino is just a little cup, and we put whipped cream in the cup. This way, you can enjoy your beverage, and your little ones can enjoy something with you. I said, oh my God, I love this. How much are they? Oh, they're free.
So we could have broken too. Oh, funny.
Tell me more. You have 2 little puppies, so you get 2 free puppuccinos. Oh my God. Can I have a third one? Oh, is there another little puppy we're missing? This one. I was so excited. I told her, I said, do you understand how happy you just made me with this whole puppuccino thing? Oh, yeah. They let it be known that if anyone ever shows up with a dog, always offer them a puppuccino on the house. So it's cool that I walked in with my dogs. Oh, yeah. They're welcome anytime. I'll just tell you guys right now,
I made this. This is so cute. This and this and this.
I am so petty. I was like, can you say that louder?
Yeah,
Your puppies are welcome anytime. I'm not gonna lie, I felt a little bit like Canelo. I did. I couldn't help it. I turned around. I was like, hey, you hear that, bitch mother? I was there the night Fluffy got fired.
I want to put something nice inside there. I don't know what though. Probably. Oh yeah, and this Peruvian thingy right here. I'm gonna put it.
Earning a bachelor's degree doesn't have to put your life on hold. Not only does WGU have a generous transfer policy, but you get to complete coursework whenever works best for you. Study and take tests on your lunch break after the kids go to bed with your morning coffee. Learn more and get started at wgu.edu.
Hace 7 años, algo dentro de mí me impulsó a aprender a hacer música. Tenía demasiadas ganas de aprender, pero no tenía idea por dónde empezar. Había tanta información que no sabía ni siquiera dónde mirar. Y aprendí tantas cosas durante estos 7 años que me hubiese encantado encontrar un video donde se resumiera todo. Y si te dijera que este video lo tiene todo, quiero compartir contigo los 7 aprendizajes más poderosos que me cambiaron la vida durante estos 7 años como productor. Estos son los secretos que realmente más me han ayudado en situaciones como sacar un tema como productor y tener éxito, en superar bloqueos creativos y también hacer que este tipo se interese por tu música. Si tan solo me das 9 minutos, quiero compartir contigo de manera clara y efectiva los aprendizajes que más difíciles se me han tomado, pero que no haya día que no agradezca haberlo internalizado durante los años. Mi objetivo con este video es que tú no tengas que pasar por lo mismo. Siempre he escuchado la misma historia sobre la música. La música es un camino súper arriesgado, que tienes que tener una idea súper novedosa e increíble, y muy pocas personas lo logran. Estoy seguro que este discurso lo has escuchado y de gente muy cercana a ti, como es tu familia, y lo más probable es que también te hayan dicho, ¿cómo vas a vivir de la música? los artistas no ganan plata, no ganan dinero. Y a lo largo de los años he conocido a muchas personas que han querido dar este paso de querer dedicarse a la música y que realmente tienen este arte que es totalmente reconocible porque es único. Y gracias a estas palabras que han dicho personas que son cercanas a ellos y que realmente les han afectado, deciden rendirse y no seguir el camino de sus sueños. Y siempre se ponen excusas como que no son personas responsables o que no tienen el dinero para poder sustentarse toda una carrera artística que conlleva muchas cosas. Pero todos sabemos que estas son meramente excusas y que lo que realmente está afectando todo esto son las palabras de estos adultos responsables que quizás quieren lo mejor para tu futuro, pero lo mejor para tu futuro tú sabes que no es eso. Mi consejo más grande es el siguiente: ya sea que te quieras dedicar a la música, a pintar o a ser una persona creativa, debes creer lo que dice tu alma y saber que es 100% posible vivir de lo que te apasiona. El mundo necesita personas que hagan arte y tengan la visión de alguien creativo. Número 2, muestra tu trabajo a todo el mundo. Por favor, no te guardes nada. El punto número 2 hace referencia a todos estos traumas que inconscientemente nos deja la gente. Y que si en un punto empezamos a mirar para atrás, nos cortaron las alas. Tendemos a ser muy perfeccionistas con nuestra obra y tenemos el mal de no saber cuándo terminar nuestra obra. Y el consejo real dentro de todo esto es que la gente solo va a mirar tu obra cuando esté terminada y cada persona la juzgará de manera distinta a través de su manera de mirar el mundo. Tienes que entender que partir es mucho mejor que guardarte todas las cosas, sobre todo en la era que vivimos del internet. Lo más probable es que tus primeras obras sean malas y eso está totalmente perfecto. Hiciste lo correcto porque te atreviste a publicar tu obra, te atreviste a publicar tu arte y lo que tienes que hacer es un análisis de esa publicación, saber qué cosas mejorar e intentarlo una próxima vez. Créeme que yo vivo de la música y el 95% de mis conexiones más grandes han sido gracias a romper este miedo de no querer mostrar mi arte y atreverme y no pensar lo que me va a decir la gente. Siempre van a haber críticas malas, pero también siempre van a haber críticas buenas. Así que, ojo, tienes que saber con qué tipo de críticas quedarte. Y gracias a un día querer atreverme a subir un simple TikTok, hoy en día conozco a muchos de los productores más grandes de la escena del reggaetón y solo por atreverme a hacer un video que me abrió muchas puertas. Así que mi mejor consejo es que no lo pienses demasiado y solo hazlo. Debes aprovechar el poder de las comunidades para poder mostrar tu arte y tus gustos en general, hermano. Conectarse con personas que tengan tus mismos gustos y tus mismas metas te ayuda, ni se imaginan cuánto en poder avanzar en su camino o en su vida como productor, artista, etc. Pero todos sabemos que es difícil encontrar gente que realmente valga la pena y que cumpla la regla del ganar-ganar, es decir, está dispuesta a ayudarte para que tú también lo ayudes y que sea algo recíproco, porque sabemos que dentro de la industria musical hay mucha envidia y que nadie quiere soltar sus trucos.
Esto ya lo vi, creo ya. ¿Dónde estás acá?
All of your favorite music artists. This is how they live the life they live of touring all over the world, creative and financial freedom, and the fun toys they get to have along the way. If you want to play in the pros of the music world, you have to become a master storyteller. With your compelling story, people would notice you and your music in a completely different way. Human beings have been conditioned to listen and keep up with great stories for centuries. It's part of our DNA. And if you want people all over the world to hear the music you worked so hard on, you're gonna need a great story to go alongside it.
This or no? Maybe.
Having a brand that...
I'm done. I'm not gonna put this little thingy there. Bye. Nice bag. Using a dremel is easy. 10 out of 10 would recommend.